Thank you all for being here today. We're actually here to listen to our first published author from our Veterans Oasis, Tom Shannon. I would also like to welcome our Tonsis veterans and the veterans that are guests here today. If all of the veterans could please stand. Thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and thank you to your families as well. So, Tom Shannon discovered our Veterans Oasis by a sign, and not some kind of mystical sign, but actually a literal sign that is posted at the entrance to our campus that says, Home of the Tonsis Veterans Oasis. I looked at some of our archives, and there actually was an article in 2014 written by the Harvard Current and featured on the front page of their edition. And it focused on our Veterans Oasis. Tom was quoted in this article, and I would like to share what he said. The sign was what got Tom Shannon into the Oasis. Shannon came to Tonsis to take a course on the Vietnam War, curious to see what young people were being taught about what he calls my war. For more than 4 decades after returning, Shannon didn't bother trying to discuss it. I went through a lot of years where I just didn't want to talk, remember, anything, he said. Then, last year, the Army veteran joined the local VFW. He saw the sign for the Tonsis Oasis while registering for a class. He ventured in and got help, and he found commonality with the other veterans, including a World War II veteran and many who weren't even born when Shannon returned from Vietnam. If you've been there and done that, then when you say something about what you're feeling or what you felt at the time, you know there's an understanding. Shannon lives in Canton, works as a civil engineer. He has a degree from UConn and audits classes at Tonsis to nurture a long-standing interest in art. He finds that being around younger veterans bring back memories of being their age. And he wants to help others when he can. He wishes there had been something like an oasis when he came home in the 1970s. Better late than never, he says. I would now like to introduce the Commissioner of Veterans Affairs, who I am honored to have with us today. I met Ron Welch when he was Vice President of Veterans Rally Point with Easter Seals. We collaborated on a few events, and he has always been a supporter and friend of our Oasis mission. Commissioner Welch.
Thank you very much, Karen. I'm not on your program as a speaker or anything else, but Karen, if I may, I'd like to say a couple words. First off, thank you for the invite today, and thank all of you for your service. We can never thank you enough for everything you've done for the freedoms that we enjoy every day. To the Vietnam vets, those of you, and probably a couple of you have heard me say this before, but you're absolutely my mentors and heroes. When I joined the military way back in the late 70s, you were the captain. And I credit you with, I'll say, the survivability of a team I had in Afghanistan. And over a period of 40 years, you guys set the standard for us. So I greatly appreciate that. And to the post 9/11 group, hey, the last 22nd anniversary was in September. 20-year war, the longest war in the history of the United States. And I was on WPLR this morning, based on some comments I made during the speaking event last Thursday night. And I just want to remind you, we can't pick where we go to fight a war. We can't pick when we leave or our mission sets or anything. But those of you that served, you did what you were asked to, when you were asked to. You followed the international laws of war. We can't thank you enough. And I just want to remind you quickly of all the good things. So, in your time, the threat was eliminated or captured. Routes were cleared of millions of landmines and other explosive devices. Weapon caches were seized. Very importantly, health was improved a lot. They said, some reporting will say that the Afghan life expectancy has been extended for 10 years. Wells were dug, clean water. 1 out of every 5 kids were dying when we first got to Afghanistan. By the time they hit 5, before they hit 5 years old. So clean water helped health, and many, many other things. So I just wanted to remind all of you and thank you all for your service. But the primary reason I came today was to listen to what Tom had to say. But on behalf of Connecticut Department's Veterans Affairs, Tom, if you come forward, please. Karen, if you'd like to come up also. We'd like to present you, Tom, with this certificate of recognition. It's from the State of Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. Presented to Tom Shannon. And Becky. So this is, yes. Okay. I don't have a real loud voice anymore. I started to lose my voice over the years, but presented to Tom Shannon in recognition of your honorable patriotic service to our nation in the United States Army as a combat veteran in Northern I Corps in the Republic of Vietnam, and on your recently published memoir, As Luck Would Have It. Thanks for your service. I signed it 15th November 2023. Thank you very much, Tom.
Could you have a fresh battery?
What you're looking at on the screen now is a picture of me and my Jeep on the Battalion Peninsula, shores of the South China Sea. I was lucky enough to be building a road along that shoreline, and it was not the worst of times to be at that location. In my memoir, and what you might recognize in the picture there is a favorite author of mine by the name of Sir Winston Spencer Churchill, and I have a quote from him: "Do not wish health and wealth, but wish good luck." Why wish good luck? Because on the Titanic, everyone was rich and healthy, and only a few were lucky. You might want to think about that. And my quote is, "Lucky works for me." What you're looking at now is a map of the AO, or Area of Operations, that I spent a few months when I first arrived in Vietnam. This is in Northern I Corps along the demilitarized zone, with Laos on the left, the South China Sea on the right, and the location that I was living at, a place called Kalu, which is at the 90-degree bend along the edge of the Quang Tri River. There was, as you can see on the map, there's a place called the Rock Pile, and I have some pictures of D-Day, I believe, that show coming into the area. But let me read an excerpt from a book written by a man by the name of Nolan, which is entitled Into Laos, the story of Dewey Canyon 2 and Lam San 719. This was the invasion of Laos in 1971. And I'm quoting from the commanding general of that operation, Lieutenant General Sutherland. Quote, Sutherland was most impressed by the combat engineer effort along Route 9, which in 2 labor-filled days had made the whole operation possible. One of the many parts of Dewey Canyon 2 and Lam San 719, which I continue to recall with professional pride and admiration, was the performance of the 45th Engineer Group with its 2 battalions, the 14th and the 27th. I was attached to the 14th, by the way. Other than I, there's probably no person who participated in the operation who can really appreciate the contribution of those engineers. It was the most outstanding performance that I observed in my 34 years of service. The sight on D-Day was magnificent to behold. A steady stream of helicopters moving engineer equipment, culvert and bridge sections from the rear area to the front. And there's one more quote that I would like to, because I am directly mentioned here. There was a transportation lieutenant trying to get his convoy activities organized. Here is the contribution that Lieutenant Shannon makes to the war effort. Quote, he headed down Route 9 and found a small engineer compound along the way to Vandergrift. Vandergrift was also known as FSA 1, or Forward Supply Area Number 1. A number of dozers were on the highway pushing away brush to widen the trail and grading the clay surface. Maelstrom, who is this transportation lieutenant, explained the situation to the young Lieutenant Shannon in charge, saying he needed 3 dozers to scrape away a 300 by 200 foot area that the minesweepers had okayed. Lieutenant Shannon, knowing his business, thank you very much, said one cat could do that in an hour, and detailed one of his Spec 4s to follow Maelstrom back. The lieutenant cleared the area in the northwest corner of the checkpoint intersection. The area proved to be too strong, and the next day, Maelstrom again called on us to make it bigger. And that was a fairly typical event for the first month of the Dewey Canyon 2 operation. That's me. My editor told me that it was important to have a little family history, and that's me, probably 5 years old, with my grandmother's breeding of boxer pups. And my quote with that was that nothing says love like a warm puppy kissing your face. And I think you can see that there. And here, I give full credit to my wife, who's here today. And I owe my life to my wife, Judy. We were, that's her opinion, my lieutenant barzan at the University of Connecticut. And I gave a lot of thought to our relationship. I was hired by the ROTC detachment at Yukon, and we had a secretary who was a young widow. Her husband was a captain, as I recall, and was killed in Vietnam. And I saw the heartache and the life that she was living as a widow. And I told myself, if I come back from Vietnam alive with all my body parts, we'll get married then. But I was not about to subject potentially my young wife to become a young widow. And here we are again at the Fort Belvoir when I was graduating from engineer officer basic class in 1970. And it was very obvious to all of us that our future involved service in Vietnam. Just a matter of time, and then not a whole lot of time, I might add. And this is a picture of a marine construction company that I was fortunate enough to work for. What you're looking at there is a 80-foot long wooden barge with a 1921 coal-fired, steam-powered Bucyrus Erie crane. And I took the photo from the rear deck of the towboat that I was employed to work on, the Chaco, and we were somewhere in Long Island Sound there. But the importance of that, I can't overstate. The World War II veterans that I was being taught by taught me many things that just you can't learn it in a book. And I want to give my boss, for lack of a better term, Bob Holbrook, who was an armored person under General George Patton's Third Army in Europe. And to give you some idea of his experience, he had 5 Sherman tanks shot out from under him during the war. Twice the only survivor from the tank. And Bob was a very knowledgeable guy, and may he rest in peace. And I had a second mentor by the name of Gene Galazzi, who was an engineer expert on bulldozers, and I can't overstate the importance of what I learned during that time frame was invaluable. It's just, there's no other way to learn it other than put your hands on it and work it out. This was added by my editors, thinking it was a fun thing. I arrived in Vietnam on Christmas Eve, and on my first experience, when I walked off of the DC-8 on the tarmac and into the arrival building, I remember quite well a colored television on the wall with Johnny Carson's Christmas. Air-conditioned building, a bar that had cold beer, and I told myself, this Vietnam trip ain't going to be all that bad. But that's, as the saying goes, first impressions can be misleading. I wasn't to see another color TV or an air-conditioned building or cold beer for a long time.
No, we wanted double A's for the battery.
This, I can tell you, this is a picture taken in June of 1956. My big brother, who happened, obviously, the taller one, 9 years older than me. Within 24 hours of this was his graduation from high school. Within 24 hours, he was on a train heading for Parris Island, South Carolina. And he would spend the next 21 years in the USMC. And I should probably talk about our getting together in 1970 in Vietnam, as he was there on his second tour of duty in Vietnam. And I was less than a week in country, and still waiting to be assigned to my permanent duty station. And I wound up in the transient hooch in Da Nang. And Da Nang, at that time, was the headquarters of the 3rd Marine Amphibious Force, where all the brass hung out. And I said to myself, well, the Army's not apparently in any big hurry to assign me to anything, because I've been screwing around, moving from from Saigon to Quinh Nhon to Cam Ranh Bay, and now I've been Da Nang. I said, I gotta go see if I can find my brother. I knew he was on a fire base somewhere outside of Da Nang. So I walked into the 3rd Marine Amphibious Force headquarters, a very large steel building, air-conditioned, fluorescent lights, Marines running all over the place. And I see a sign hanging from the ceiling. It says communications. And I know my brother is a communication, what we call him, commo chief, I believe would be the proper term. So I go over there, and there's a countertop there, and behind the counter is a Marine Corps gunnery sergeant, as most gunnery sergeants are. He's got his feet up on his desk. He's talking on the landline.
And the one over there.
I stand there for no less than 5 seconds, and he looks up and he
To a
says,
different room, but it's
can I do something for you, Lieutenant? I said, well, Gunny, it's a long shot, but I'm looking for my brother. Do you have any idea where I might find Gunnery Sergeant Shannon? Sort of cocks his head, puts the phone back to his head. Hey, Shannon, somebody here wants to talk to me. Now you tell me what the odds are of the only Marine that I talked to in Vietnam. I don't know how many tens of thousands of them were running all over Northern Ireland. He's talking to my brother on the telephone. So he hands me the phone, and I'm a lieutenant, my brother's a gunnery sergeant. I said, I request that you come in here and pick me up, because I'm away off in the Army for a couple of days. Which he did. The fight says, tomorrow after the mine sweep, I'll come in and pick you up. I said, I hope you know where the hell I am, because I have no idea. And so we spent a couple of days discussing our futures. And those of you that maybe know a little of the history, during World War II, there were the 5 Sullivan brothers in one family. All 5 of them were killed when their, I think it was a destroyer, was torpedoed. And at that time, our Congress passed a law stating that all males in the family cannot all be in a combat zone at the same time. So here's my brother in the Marine Corps, me in the Army, and we're obviously in a combat zone. So we had a discussion, and he was on his second tour. He was married. I'm on my first tour. I'm not married. So I had a much stronger argument than he had. So he went home, and he to his wife. And I thought, being an officer, that I would have, as I remember, a much safer job than you're going to do. Trust me, when I say second lieutenants do not have very safe jobs. It requires an officer, and there ain't no lower other than an 01 that's in the list. This is me, probably the first week. I'm outside my hooch at Fire Support Base Nancy, which was probably, I don't know, 10, 12 miles south of Long Tree. And we were working on improving the road between Nancy and another fire base called Barbara, which was overlooking the Ashaw Valley. It was a job that had been ongoing for quite a while, and it was, I guess, what I would call maybe a typical engineer situation. Every day you start the day sweeping for landmines in the road. Sometimes you find them, sometimes they find you. Sometimes the bad guys decide to ambush you, and other days they don't. And this is a picture of my guys in the Quang Tri River. I would say it was probably about a month into the Dewey Canyon 2 operation, and everybody needed a good soaking in the river because everybody was in pretty, I don't know what the word would be, but shall we say not too clean.
Test.
I think maybe I don't need to yell as much. I apologize. I have atrophy of the vocal cords, so I not as loud as I should be probably. And that's me enjoying a passable ribbon on the same day as the previous photograph, and we were, matter of fact, the whole damn battalion was there that time. And here we are back at Barber Road, as we called it. What you have in the background there is red smoke. We were getting ready to detonate a fairly large charge to level the top of the road approach that we were working on. And that's my Jeep with typical. I like to keep a guy on the machine gun and the driver, and I can go about whatever the job requires. This is I'm quite proud of my innovative capabilities here. What you're looking at there is two 290 scrapers and a low bed in between them with a damaged grader on them. And what happened there was the tractor that's usually attached to that low bed also became damaged. So I had one of my 5-ton dump trucks tow that back into the area. And I managed to take the 290s and jerry rig a push and pull, and got the whole damn thing back to where we were inside our defensive perimeter. Because the last thing I wanted to do is leave that. I wasn't about to assign a guard to be in the middle of nowhere trying to protect the equipment. So anyway, it shows my innovative capabilities that were in the book. This is on D-Day, the invasion of Laos. We're coming along QL9. I see the 290 in the front there. I think there's another one after that. And I'm in the lead in my Jeep. We were, the thing that Lieutenant General Sutherland was talking about the helicopters, that was the night before, probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 hours before this. All the machines that are in a light equipment company are not light. Those scrapers, when they're fully loaded, weigh about 127,000 pounds. There ain't no helicopters in the inventory that's going to airlift any of that stuff. So therefore, Lieutenant Shannon drives them down the road to where we're heading for, which was basically Quezon. And the other, my general assignment was to keep the road passable from Dong Ha to Quezon. And it was a dirt road for the most part. And when you're getting hundreds of transport vehicles pounding the road every day, it requires a lot of maintenance. This is QL9 showing the elephant grass that was growing along the shoulders, and it was to the point where, an enemy hiding in that grass could lunge out with a bayonet and stab you in the ear. I mean, it was one of our primary missions right from the get-go was to get the dozers in there and push all of that vegetation back. Unfortunately, to make the job a little more difficult, our friends who had been there back in 1968 planted, I would guess, hundreds of thousands of landmines along the road. Thank you, USMC. And I was constantly getting radio calls from my guys saying, Lieutenant, you might want to come down here. We're pushing up a whole lot of mines. And like, what am I going to do about it? But anyway, that was the situation. This picture is back at Barber Road between Nancy and Barber. Forget about the good-looking guy down below. I'm the good-looking guy in the helicopter taking the photograph. That's my Minesweep team up there. The one thing that is missing that would typically be there, what you have is, and in the front, the guys with the mine detector, behind them, the proofing vehicle, which is a Caterpillar D7 tractor, and behind them is a dump truck loaded with our security. Many times we'd have an armored vehicle from the 1st and the 5th Mechanized Division. They would give us either what they call a Duster, a twin 40mm anti-aircraft armored vehicle, or a quad 50. And behind that would be me and my Jeep. So this is just a little bit of maybe a shortened version of what our typical Minesweep team would look like. And here's a couple of photographs that I think are somewhat important to show, because on the left is my Jeep driver with his M79 in his hand, looking into the mine crater that the guys obviously didn't find in the Minesweep. And as I recall, that destroyed one of my 5-ton dump trucks, and I believe there was 17 Arvin troops that were either WIA or KIA. On the right is me standing in a windrow of dust. A lot of times you see a photograph of a vehicle going down the road in a cloud of dust. I'm standing in about 6 or 8 inches of fine powdered dust, and it don't take a whole lot to make that all airborne. And you can see I have my goggles on, and to keep the dust out of your eyes, and choking on dust was just the way life was. And here is one of my Caterpillar tractors that took a direct hit from an 82mm mortar at Firebase Charlie 2, which I believe the Marines call Contien. And that round landed right on the buddy seat, which is no longer there. But that tractor was heading for the retro graveyard. Had more holes in it than you could count. And this is me in my Jeep, not having a good day because my battalion commander thought it would be a real good idea if I went back to this location where I told him probably a month earlier that I uncovered a 2,000-pound aerial bomb. And behind me there is the rock pile, a fairly well-known landmark along the DMZ. And so anyway, he sent me back there, and I took my demolition expert with me, and we made the 2,000-pound bomb disappear. But that area was an extremely bad area. And I was earlier in the mission was tasked with opening up a rock quarry at that location, and once again, as luck would have it, the gun truck by the name of Eve of Destruction arrived at an opportune time and saved our ass. Speaking of quarrying and crushing rocks, this picture was taken by an official Army photographer. It shows a 75-ton-per-hour rock crusher in operation, and one of my 5-ton dumps is getting ready to dump a load into the inlet end of the thing, and the conveyor belt on the other end of it is where the 6-inch minus aggregate comes out of. And there was a large priority on getting rock to Quezon because the opening up the airstrip was falling behind, and that was key to the invasion of Laos. So to say the least, this was a high priority job, and that was what we were taxed with. It's a picture of the 175 self-propelled gun going down somewhere on QL9. These were the weapons that were located in our fire bases. The 175, the largest cannon in the inventory, and we also had 8-inch howitzers and 155s, 105s, depending upon what was happening. But these guys were very prevalent. That was we used to do what they call switching the guns one Sunday morning, as I recall, because these 175s can only fire a very, what I call, limited number of rounds before the tube has to be replaced. They wear out. So we would switch the guns. We'd take an old one that needed to have maintenance done on it and put a new one in. As luck would have it, the NBA were not stupid people. They let the old one come off of the fire base with no problem. And the new one is going back, and boom, a large mine goes off and kills everybody on the cannon and blows it to smithereens. And there it is. I took this just because it was sort of unique, a little bit south of Da Nang. It's a very large Buddha. I don't know, I think there's a human on the staging there. Give you some idea of the size of that monument. It was big. And again, this is Da Nang. This is an F-4 coming in for a landing. I was on the north end of the airstrip, which the thing that's most memorable in my mind about that area, on the north end of the airstrip, was the mortuary. And I would tell my Jeep driver, floor it. And I would suck in a couple of deep breaths and hold my breath to get past the mortuary, because you could smell it long before you could see it. I don't want to get too negative here, but when you're in a tropical climate and human bodies decay very quickly, it's ain't a job for everyone. Here I am in Chuai at the sand ramp. On the left is me standing in front of the mess hall, which is totally leveled about, I don't know, 20 minutes before it totally collapsed. I went in there and ordered the mess sergeant and all of his personnel to vacate the building. He grumbled about it a little bit, but I explained to him that I didn't expect the building to be standing much longer. There was a typhoon. It was the strongest typhoon, I believe they were saying, in 27 years. A friend of mine that worked over in the airfield portion of it told me that the anemometer at the airport destructed after the winds were clocked at over 200 miles an hour. And what you're looking at there is a reinforced concrete utility pole built by the French, I would guess probably back in the 1950s. And it snapped in about 3 pieces. And we had a few casualties during the typhoon. One unfortunate guy was in his Quonset hut, and a 2x4 flew through the window and speared him. It was like an arrow. Killed him. So one never knows. Your luck isn't running with you. You know, this is my favorite gun truck, the Eva Destruction. That, in my view, saved my butt on QL9. And that thing had, I don't know, I would guesstimate at least 6 50 caliber machine guns mounted in the back. And they knew their business because when they were entering into our predicament between us and the NBA, they called on their security net, and within 5 minutes, I had an entire platoon of M4883 tanks lined up side by side by side. And I knew at that point that I was going to have a much better day than the guys out there in the bushes. And I never saw jungle vaporized the way when an M48 fires their 90 millimeter with a flechette round or canister. When it hits that vegetation, it just turns into green mist. And that's a good thing, assuming that you're on the other side. This is Firebase Barbara. Up on the top of it, you can't really appreciate the steepness of that slope, but that entire slope is heavily mined and got every kind of barbed wire that engineers could dream up. And there was, I always had a few of my guys up there, and there was a battery of 175s, and in the background there you can sort of see, I think, the road that we were working on heading towards the South China Sea. And this is part of the road that we're doing. And I think what I wanted to point out with that is the impact of Agent Orange. You don't see a green leaf anywhere there. And the defoliant is quite effective. And not only did it defoliate the vegetation, but unfortunately took care of a lot of human beings too. And this is a close-up view of one of my 290s, the scrapers. And that gives you some idea of the size of them. Those wheels on that thing were just about the same height as I am. And we would move a lot of dirt with those pigs. This is a picture of the road winding through the foothills of the Annamite Mountains, which is where behind me from where I'm taking this photo is Fire Base Barbara, and I'm looking out towards Nancy and the South China Sea. There's a few vehicles in the photograph there coming up there. It was pretty rough terrain. I took this picture, I guess, just because I wanted to have the name China Beach in the photo. This is in Da Nang, this is in-country R&R, and I was just, for lack of a better term, goofing off. I would spend an afternoon there chugging on a bottle of wine with absolutely nothing to do. And it was getting to be one thing that I noticed about the military. If you keep the troops busy, you're not going to have any problems. But if you don't keep them busy and they sit around and they start thinking about what the hell can I do to create problems, they can't do that. And so I wanted to get the hell out of there. And I managed after a couple of weeks there. It wasn't a wise decision on my part, but I said, the hell with it, we're going. The problem was I was waiting for my next unit to send me some security. Because when you switch companies, you turn in all of your equipment, and your new company then assigns you. And unfortunately, the bastards weren't interested in sending security to us, so I said, the hell with it, we're going anyway. And me and my men, we had our own personal weapons. I had an AK-47, 245s, my driver, I don't know what the hell he had, but everybody had some sort of personal weapon. And so we just said, the hell with it, we're going. And as luck would have it, we made it. But it was a little hairy. I'm here to tell a tale, so that says it all in my book. These kids, this is on the Batangan Peninsula, and I'm sitting in my Jeep, and these little, bigger kids lived in a nearby village, and that little girl really stole my heart. What the message, they were looking for, what's the GI going to give me tonight? You got candy, you got peaches, you got this, you got that. Your hand is not on top, which didn't bother me. But what I got in return was a break from the damn war. My mind was so far away from guns and bullets and loud noises. I was just enjoying the hell out of having kids. I mean, it broke up my day to the point where I looked forward to it. And obviously they did too. So it was a mutual deal. This is an interesting situation. On the left is my plaque that was awarded me. I've got it back there. And what is interesting about it is it's engraved with my name with one mistake on that plaque. And that's my middle initial, which, as you've already seen on my title of the book, middle initial H. On that plaque is the middle initial E. On the right is a picture of the Vietnam Memorial in Washington. And just below that panel 17, line 24, it's got Lieutenant Thomas Shannon. And I don't know what the message is there, but it's stuck with me. Obviously, the one on the wall, he was a forward observer in the artillery, and he was killed before I got to Vietnam. But just the fact that my name is wrong, that his name is on the wall, all I know is there's got to be a message there. I didn't quite understand it, but it stuck with me. And I think we're pretty close to the end. Now, here I am with Major General Lehman Dow. I wouldn't say he was a good friend, but I met him on numerous occasions. He lived in Hartford. A hell of a guy. He was a war hero in the Vietnamese army. And this was at the Hartford, the state capitol, on Remembrance Day ceremony. And General Dow told me after the fall of Saigon, he spent 18 years in a re-education camp run by the communists. And he told me this. He said, they tried to tell me how good communism is. He said, you'd go in one ear and out the other. And those re-education camps were not a fun time, but this guy was tough. God bless him. This is a letter that I purchased in a Hartford, what they used to call paper mania, where they would sell. You got the weirdest thing. I was in there one time, I saw a wad of blueprints about that big. A battleship. You want to build a battleship? Here's a set of drawings to build the damn thing. But anyway, I bought this letter, and it's an original. And the guy assured me that because it was addressed to this guy by the name of Lord, that it was not a fake. And I have that letter back here too. And if I can find it here, and I'll read an excerpt from it. It's important. I believe. And okay. President Eisenhower wrote this letter February 20th, 1948, before he was elected president, obviously. He was only a five-star general serving as the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. Certainly he knew far more about war than I do. Those of us who fought in Vietnam did what was best for America and put the, quote, cause above himself. It was certainly not in the best personal interest of Vietnam veterans to get shot at and go through the hell of combat. As I had told my daughter, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. Read that again. Someone has to do it. I was one of many, and I would do it again. I think that completes my talk. Happy to try to answer any questions that any of you may have. I was told that we needed to allow a lot of time for questions and answers. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Hi, Tom. It's amazing that how you were talking on the Vietnam combat vets that I've known Tom how many years now? In and out a couple, 2, 3, 4 years.
52.
And I really don't talk much about Vietnam, like for no reason, but we were just reminiscing. Tom and I were there at the same damn time. I was in Quan Tri, you was the 76 Ranger group. I wasn't a Ranger then, but a Ranger because my own was an M16 and a 79 grenade launcher. He was Eve of Destruction, I was on that truck. There's a couple of others in there. Remember the Ace of Spades? The Ace of Spades was up in Fubai. And then Can't Heat was another one that was up that way. They were the gear jammers, right?
Yep.
Now, it's amazing, 52 years, I didn't know Tom until I came here. And we have something in common, and I give you so much credit and courage for writing a book and putting your memoirs down. Because our time, it wasn't a very popular war, unfortunately. And when we came back, I was told on the Freedom Bird, take your uniform off. Not only I, everybody was. Take your uniform off when you land in California, you're probably going to be spit on and end up in a fight. When we were out there, we did it for our country, but more importantly, we did it for the 6-man team that I used to go out with a couple of times a night. And I have some of the times the 6 of us didn't come back. But Tom, congratulations. This is fantastic. I hope you get the bestseller award. Because it should be. It should be. Now, everybody's laughing, but it should be. Because it takes courage. I could never do this. I could never do this. It takes courage to put your thoughts down, pen to paper, and come out with this. Because long after we're gone, hopefully, that book will be sitting on someone's shelf. If someone picks it up and starts reading about what our generation went through in Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Coming from you, that means a lot to me.
Hearing you today means an awful lot.
Anyone else? Yes.
This is much less significant, but do you have any favorite really clever engineering things that you did? Like you mentioned the push-pull to get that large piece of equipment out, but do you have any other kind of favorite really clever jury rigs you pulled off?
Any favorite what?
Jury rigs, figuring out how to solve a problem in a creative or even odd way.
Well, I'm not sure I totally understand what you're asking me, but
How about just staying alive?
Using creativity. Using creativity
Not
beyond the
necessarily
book.
by the book.
Yeah.
well,
Off the record.
I would say just being able to handle whatever pops up unexpectedly. For example, one morning early in my experience there, our outfit had the heavy equipment, which I think came through in what I showed. And one of the things that I learned, everybody in a combat situation has a breaking point. I met my breaking point. When as I wrote in the book, I started losing. I was shaking. I was weeping uncontrollably. I was losing it. I was going out on my gourd. And I told myself, if I don't do something, I'm going to have a total breakdown. I'm going to be totally useless. So I self-diagnosed. I went back. I got my bottle of Canadian Club, and I got myself plastered. And the next day, I got in my Jeep, and I went down to Firebase Nancy. And when I was there, I told myself when I went to Vietnam, I don't want to make close friends, because I'd read enough history books about World War II, Korea, where, oh, my good buddy got killed, oh my God, such a terrible impact on me. So I said, screw it, I don't want a lot of good friends. So I'm not here to make friends. So anyway, I did break my rule a little bit. I had another lieutenant who had reached his breaking point, and they shipped him down to Firebase Nancy. And I spent a couple of days there talking to him, and he was going through hell. And this is one of the reasons why I give my wife so much credit. This guy's wife sent him the classic Dear John letter. I'm taking the kids, drop dead, I don't love you anymore. And when you're in combat and you're trying to hold on to something, in my case, my future wife, this guy just couldn't deal with it. And I was trying to talk to him. I mean, I don't pretend that I'm a junior psychologist or whatever, but I was trying to give him some hope for the future. But then I had to go back. Duty was calling me, so take care, see you. I wasn't gone for more than, I don't know, less than a day. He blew his brains out, killed himself. And the guys that were there told me, geez, when you were here, you know, we noticed that, you know, he was getting better. You know, he looked like he was, you know, going to be all right. I guess I must have been doing something right, but my job isn't to be the, you know, psychiatrist for the guys. So, you know, that's sort of human thought. It's not, I mean, you read a lot of military memoirs, it's all about, you know, we were in the rice paddies and the, you know, enemy was shooting us, we were shooting them, blah, blah, blah. This is more of a human fact. And that's what sticks with me, anyway. You know, I hope that, you know, that resonates with people. And it's not all about, I remember this. I was coming back, as a matter of fact, it was that same time. Coming back from Nancy, I'm going down QL9, and I hear the sound of kids playing in the river. It's a hot day. Cam Law was the village, I believe. So I told my driver, pull over to the edge and stop. I look down in the river, and there's a bunch of kids doing what kids do, splashing, having a good time in the river. And I look, and here's this huge snake. I don't know if it was a king cobra or some sort of a python. This baby is heading towards the kids. I jump in the back, I get on my M60, and I started a nice long burst at one end of the snake, went down to the other. When I stopped shooting, it was nothing but little pieces of snake in the river. And the villagers were all, when I opened up with the gun, they thought, oh my God, this stupid American is shooting us, and he's going to kill us. And then they realized that I was helping them. I just made that snake disappear. I figured he was going to attack the kids. But that's another thing that sort of sticks in my head. It didn't win the war or anything, but I thought it was a worthwhile thing to do that. Who else?
I can't read the last paragraph on Eisenhower. Can you read the last paragraph?
Yeah. It is in such a spirit of brotherhood that Americans must unite to combat the problems of the peace, our own tranquility, and continued
Productiveness.
Productiveness can only be assured only through harmony and fellowship. And these attributes faithfully sustained may well prove our greatest contribution to a civilization paralyzed and wasted by dissension. And I should point out in the beginning of this letter, the single purpose of this letter is to tell you why My experience in the war has excited my interest in Brotherhood Week, sponsored by the National Conference of Christians and Jews. Of course, 1948, I believe, was the year that Israel was created. So they may criticize General Eisenhower as being not a heavy thinker, but in my view, he was a guy that knew what he was talking about. Next. Yes.
No, I'm just going to come on. I have a few words to say about you. We have no questions. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Rachel Highland. I'm a librarian here at CT State Tunxus, and I'm privileged to co-sponsor. We are in the library privileged to co-sponsor this event with the Veterans Oasis. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out Karen DeBerry, who's the director of the Veterans Oasis, and all she did today was together. But going back to your question, I think you should read the book because Tom really does share some great stories. For some reason, Tom thinks that I know a lot about books and asked me to read it, and it was a privilege, and I learned a lot. I am somewhat of an amateur historian in general, and the Vietnam War in particular. It's great that we offer the Vietnam War class on this campus. It's helped me to learn a lot more, and we have a great collection supporting that class. And I would encourage you to take that class. But it was a privilege to read Tom's book, and what really stood out to me, well, first of all, I hadn't read much or knew much about combat engineering, particularly in the Vietnam War, and I learned a lot. The danger, the perils, but also the absurdity and the humor of combat engineering comes through. And the best thing about Tom's book is that it's really his voice. You really feel his experience, and you really feel to get to know him, and which is a privilege because he's a wonderful man. I've known Tom peripherally as a patron in the library for many years, always with a smile, always gentle and polite, and also funny. But through this experience, it's great to get to know him better personally and to help him share his story with you. So I would definitely recommend, we do have the book in the library. There are some books in the back for you to check out or take out or buy. But you'll really get to know Tom, the wonderful man that he is, the experiences that he has had, a lot about the work that it takes to be a combat engineer. Fantastic. And I just want to congratulate Tom and say that I could see that you could be a mentor for our current veterans in the Oasis to share their stories. That would be great. Whether it's in the form of memoir or essay or poems or short stories, I think you would be a great mentor for that, and that would be a wonderful thing to do. You're an inspiration. Thank you all so much for coming.